One of it might be a nice little segue. There's a question which I liked a lot, which is how do you deal with an overproduced song with too many parts?
Oh, good one.
And let me just say first, I think both of our philosophies generally is this sort of minimal effective dose type thing. If you can get away with a rich sounding mix, a great arrangement, a great song, any of the sorts of things with the fewest number of moves, the fewest number of parts that add up to a whole. And that's one of the reasons you talk a lot about density in a mix and trying to achieve density with a small number of elements. If you can get just a couple or a few rich sounds and make it feel complete, that to us in our taste is a real victory. That you want a record like, I don't know, one of my favorites, a record like Drop It Like It's Hot or something where it's like,
ooh, so simple.
It's really simple, but it sounds rich and thick and crunchy.
There's no bass in that either, right? Am I crazy?
There's an 808 that changes pitch in the hook, but it's subtle. But it's so magical.
Subtle. The kick though is the thing.
The kick is great. And of course there's the one and that there's something about achieving a very complete sound with a minimal amount of elements. So anyway, if you were presented with a production that has way too much shit in it, how do you think about it?
I think about it a couple of ways. I think reductive and subtractive when it comes to kind of the mud, the redundancies. So let's consider
in the frequency ranges, you mean?
Yeah, but also in parts too. Like find the character that you're looking for in the main. Okay, let's build it from the bottom. Say there's drums and there's a bass, and that's pretty minimal. There's one main bass or one bass sound that's created from two bass layers. Let's not think about specifically in layers. Drums, bass, and then say there's a bunch of synths, and they're all doing the same thing. Maybe there's 12 synths. You would call that overproduction. I take all of those synths besides one that I think is whether I think it is or it's dictated that way in the rough or it's obvious that one sound is the main sound. I take the rest, I send them to a bus, and I'll carve out a lot of mid-range in them to create space for the character of the main synth, right? Same thing with guitars. So in layers, I'll filter up a lot of bottom end, and I'll kind of get rid of a lot of information in the muddy group of things, and bring clarity for the main characteristic sounds. So I don't really mute. I don't. I'm also coming at this question a little difficultly because the producers that I'm working with are pretty dialed in. So this isn't a common issue in my life these days. So
it seems like what the question generally, what it applies to is, how do you create space? How do you minimize and create space for things that have too much? And it seems like, one of the things I've learned from you a lot is thinking of not just frequency ranges, but very narrow things where like you can have a very different character of a vocal at 10K and a hat at 12K and a synth that has air above that or below that.
Yeah.
And you'll do a lot of filtering where you're actually low passing and high passing different things where it's like, you don't need this 12K information on this
like
guitar.
Let's everything. Bring it down to, you just got rid of everything. Like it just, it's so redundant. It just adds up to noise. So I'll see that sometimes with the Mag EQ airband on like every vocal track. And you're like, wait, which one do you want to occupy that space? They can't all do it. You're like, oh, it's a feel thing. What? I can create feel in a better way, not having airband on 55 vocal tracks.
Well, I've found this a lot when I'm writing and producing because so much of, like I'll get in for 2 days with an artist and we will produce, a really rough, simple demo in those couple of days just to get the song down. We're song focused, maybe a few sounds trying to inspire the artist. You get a demo and then they're gone. I've got a vocal. I've got some background vocals. I've got a basic track. Now what do I do with it? And what I will often do is, again, it's the Hemingway write drunk, edit sober. I just go crazy on it and throw tons of stuff on it. And then the next day go back and try to put on my editor mixer brain where I'll filter things, take things out and be sort of a reducer. Which I know Rick Rubin used to get on the credit he used to get on his records back in the day as reducer, not producer, because a lot of times people, as they're starting out, you're throwing lots and lots of things in there, or when you're just generating ideas, you're throwing lots of shit in a production. So as a mixer or as a producer, finisher or whatever, a lot of it is about picking the elements that are going to work best together, filtering things out, not trying to feature everything, which I used to do a lot more.
Yeah. I used to try to do that too. It seems like a losing battle all the time because the human ear can only hear 3 things at the same time anyway. And we tend to have 4 main characters in songs that you're going to have to balance between what you're paying attention to and what's in the foreground. And clearly we want the vocal to be in the foreground the most time in popular music. So that and a drum groove and a bass line is already enough. And I'm always going to be a proponent for chords in music. So that's the 4th kind of thing. So if there's 24 sounds doing the chords, I want to pick the one that has the most unique characters. It's not a bunch of mush doing chords, whether it's like a plucky kind of thing, so it's attacky, or it's like slow attack and mushy and womp kind of vibe. Like, pick which one of those is going to be the main characteristic. So when your ear hears it and you feel it, it can say, oh, that's cool. It does that thing. And it's pokey, or it's boingy, or it's bouncy, or it's lush. Let's pick some, I don't say these things out loud when I'm doing it, but that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a character in those sounds. So when it comes to, again, it's rare because even today on this Keto record, I mean, it's like, man, it's four main elements and it sounds so good already. The synth is 1 synth sound, or at least the layer that I'm getting, it sounds like 1 synth sound. Could it be 4? Could it have a flute up top and a weird thing down below and a Juno below? Like, it could, but to me it's 1 synth. So that to me is her synth sound. That's what she wanted her synth to sound like. So how can I elevate that or leave it alone? So Overproduction, there you are. I was shouting out your dope.
Talk about your
today.
song, Keto.
I'm having so much fun on it, and I took a nice perspective break to come on here, and I'm going to jump back in and finish it.
There's a piece of advice which I will say out loud now. I say to myself all the time, and I fail to follow it constantly. But if you try to feature everything, then you're featuring nothing.
Yes,
if everything.
That's what
is
I mean
loud,
about the redundancy in a high shelf EQ. Like, what are you doing with 55 vocals with the same EQ on it? It doesn't just. Common sense wise, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, Keto, there you go. It's more than just one sound.
It sounds like one idea though. Like the synth part sounds like one idea, and that's beautiful.
And that's the thing that's tough.
If that was sent to me in 24 layers, I would imagine my brain going fucking crazy, being like, oh, I can geek out with each layer. Like, that's not what I want to do. That's not what you want me to do, right? That's not, I mean, maybe sometimes, but that's not normally what people want.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, definitely figuring out a minimal number of things to feature at any given time is an extremely important part of this process.
Yeah. It's more fun that way too.